Cheers, everyone. It's Sleepy Reader, aka Damien. That's a London Fog. I'm not sure exactly what that is. It's made with tea that I got from a cafe nearby, where I was sitting and reading the last comic on my stack here of 9 comics. This is a stack of comics from 2 weeks, the last week of the year and the first week of this new year. I only got 2 comics this first week of the new year. And after I picked up those 2 comics, I let my shop know that I am closing out my pull box. So I will still be getting a few new comics, but not as many, and eventually less and less. I kind of feel like there's a few series, mini series that I want to play out to the end. A lot that I can just let go, to tell the truth. Because it's as I've mentioned in some other videos, my New Year's resolution is to focus on reading many of the back issues that I've gotten over the years that I haven't got around to reading, and some collected editions, hardbacks and trades. So 2023 will be devoted to catching up on that to some degree, and then the plan is in 2024 to go back to getting new comics as well. We'll see how I feel after many months of not picking up new comics, where I stand. I do still feel there's lots of good comics out there, but there's also the comic industry is so overproducing that it does take some work to find those good ones. And kind of sadly, this last week of doing this countdown is kind of going out on a whimper. Of these 9 comics, I would say I enjoyed 4 of them, and there was no comic that was in that, I totally love comics kind of realm. There were 2 comics that I thought were quite good. So, yeah. And of course, as always, highly subjective, just my opinions based on my enjoyment of what I read at the time I read it. So, anyway, going forward, I hope to still do kind of comic thoughts videos, but they won't be organized in a countdown. They'll just be look at the random reading that I've been doing the past week. Hopefully I can manage to keep doing it weekly. So we'll see how that goes. Normally I read like 2 comics a day. I don't know what it'll be like when I'm focusing on back issues and on collections. Sometimes collections can be hard because I'm such a flitting about like a fish or a butterfly amongst books. It might take me a long time to actually finish a collection as I read part of it, then flit to something else. Anyway, that's not important. This will, like recent videos, but for the last time, I'll do a quick countdown. Then I will take a look inside, and then I will do a haul. And this week's haul is going to be large. So the biggest part of this video should, in theory, be the haul part. So, and some of these comics were particularly disappointing because they had great art, but I just couldn't stand the writing. And the king of that was this issue number 2 of Doctor Strange, Fall Sunrise, written and drawn, or mostly drawn by, they don't have his name on the cover. Oh no, there it is. It's just hard to read in this light. By Tradd Moore, with colors by his wife, Heather Moore. And the writing, the story here just gave me a headache. I really had to sort of force myself to read all the way through, and there were text bits that I think I just scanned quickly. And as far as I can tell, the story idea is, for me, what I would call stupid. And then Mosley, a new comic written by Rob Guillory with art by Sam Lofty and coloring by one of the really good colorists, Jean-Francis Boulot. And it's from Boom Comics, but on the writing level, it feels to me discombobulated and greatly in need of an editor and a rethink of how to present the complex of science fiction ideas. I'll say a little more when we take the look inside, I guess. And I was really looking forward to reading Historia number 3. But it's telling maybe that I never read Historia number 2, Wonder Woman Historia, The Amazons. And it's basically a retelling of mythology, I guess, feminist rethinking of mythology surrounding the Amazons, by Kelly Sue DeConnick. And each individual volume, it was oversized, had art by a different artist. And I remember thinking volume 1 was pretty good, but I think I was carried along by the art. And I really enjoyed the art in here. Oh, I should show that when I take the dive in. But I found the story, it was almost like it just floated along with little bits of ideas of a story, really. If I were to just look at the script, I think I would have told the writer, there's not a story here yet. You need to firm it up and dig deeper and create real scenes and all of that stuff. Maybe it seems very picky, but I had really, of those 3, Mosley was the best read, but it was certainly eclipsed in the powerful art of the Wonder Woman thing or the Amazons really made me enjoy it a little bit more. In at number 6 is Detective Comics by Ram V. I'd already known that I wanted to drop this, but since I knew I was about to close out my pull list, I didn't bother dropping individual things. Great art in here for the most part, by Reyes. Which Reyes? There's 2 Reyeses, isn't there? It's Ivan Reyes. Very good art in here. Very good coloring. Is it still Dave Stewart? Yeah, it's still Dave Stewart coloring. But Ram V is trying to tell too big of a story, and it's just doesn't click with me at all anymore. And I had to sit down 3 or 4 times to finish reading this. I kept reading a few pages and putting it off and doing other stuff. A lot more fun was Sergeant Rock and the Army of the Dead, which I'm putting at number 5. But as I kind of suspected, there is no more to the story than we already got in the first 2 issues. And this issue feels 100% redundant. It's just our heroes still behind enemy lines, still shooting at Nazis and shooting at Nazi zombies. And that's pretty much it. It's kind of funny in places. Sacrament perhaps suffered from my high expectations. This was the finale of Sacrament, and I did not enjoy it as much as the story leading up to it. It felt like in the end, the story carried less weight and moment or momentousness to the world that it existed in. And since this story presumably is the only story we'll ever get about that particular science fiction world, I wanted it to have more importance. I guess we did have the importance of, perhaps the journey of the main character's soul, but I don't know, it just didn't come out as strongly as I had hoped from the strong issues before. Now, the top 3 here are all strong contenders. I enjoyed Pink Lemonade. Is this number 3 or number 4? Number 4, quite a bit. It feels even more Michael Allreddish in its kind of innocent story with kind of a light satire of Hollywood and superheroes and pop culture. It's a lot of fun, really nice art, really nice color. I just, for whatever reason, and it might just be me right now, I felt a little distanced from it. I thought when I started it, maybe this would be my top book of the week, because it was the last thing I read and nothing had really jumped out at me. But for whatever reason, I didn't get as much, I just didn't connect to it quite as much as I did the top 2 books, even though they're not my most favorite of my usual comic book reading. A new book from Matt Kindt, Spy Superb. Interesting packaging. It's got a wrapper around a real cover. And it's an oversized issue, but they did charge quite a lot for it, $8. And maybe that influenced my thinking a little bit too. But it was fun, and by the end, I realized it's a really, really broad comedy. You could almost see, I'm forgetting the name, the director of the Pink Panther movies directing a movie based on this or something. My favorite part was the pretentious, egotistical loser who thinks he's writing a brilliant science fiction novel. It was extremely over the top, though. And generally, this is a kind of crypto spy novel or crypto spy story where the spy Superb doesn't even really exist. He's a creation of the spy agency, and that was very clever. But the way it's done, after a while, I realized it was done as really broad comedy. I enjoyed reading this issue. I don't feel a huge pull to read the next issue, particularly at the price of $8. So I probably won't, or I'll wait till I can get it in a trade or read it digitally or something like that. And finally, at number one, a book that's often been one of my favorites, Dark Knights of Steel. It's kind of winding down in a weird way in its climax. The huge battle that we've been having in the past two issues was fun, but not as fun as the lead up to it. What can you do, really, when you're doing a big fantasy novel type of thing? And by the end of this issue, I think we get a revelation of what is behind all the conflict, or who is behind all the conflict. And maybe in the remaining 3 issues, we'll find out more about why that entity decided or is creating these problems. And hopefully, I don't know, it feels like this world is not going to be fully explored in these 12 issues, and that we'll be coming back to it. I think it's been quite successful, I assume, because they did also put out a special one-shot about it. The art by, what's her name? Yasmin Putri. The script is by Tom Taylor, but Yasmin Putri's art is sublime to find in a DC comic. Pretty incredible. So that was my number one. I enjoyed it, but I often, in these lists, if I have 9 comics, my number one will have blown me away a lot more than that. So there you go. That's the end of my comic book countdowns for now, for the foreseeable future. But I will be flipping the camera around and we'll take a nice little deep dive. All right, let's take a look inside these 9 comics. And there was my number 9 book, my biggest disappointment. The writing irritated me so much that this incredible artwork didn't make up for it. Starting here, you had to read all this stuff in theory to understand what's going on. Of course, you read it and it doesn't mean anything to you at first. Maybe something to refer back to as you read the rest of the story. And there is another artist involved, Jensine Ekwal, special guest artist. I'm guessing this introductory couple of chapters was by her. And then we get into the main story, and I'm assuming this is all by Tradd Moore. It's incredible art. We do kind of learn that for some reason Doctor Strange has agreed to be in 2 universes at once while delivering someone's baby who might destroy the universe or a universe. So we can read all this stuff and try to figure out. None of it really made sense to me, and the way it was written and presented just got more and more confusing as the issue went on. So in the first issue, I was enjoying it enough. I couldn't tell exactly what was going on, but I had the general sense, and I figured it would become more clear as it went on, but now it's gotten super foggy. I think what I want to do, because I love this artwork so much, is I'll want to pick up these as back issues when they become a little cheaper, because it's a thicker book, but it's also a more expensive book than your average commercial comic book. It is amazing that Marvel is giving free rein to an artist like this, who has such a different style than people expect from superhero comics. But Sad to say, I think he needs a lot more editing on the writing side. And maybe it's just a situation of if you want him to do a comic at this point, you have to let him have free reign, or he'll just go over to Image and do something else there. This is an awesome double-page spread. And his, what we presume to be his wife doing the colors does an absolutely fantastic job. I wonder if she colors anyone else. But she's certainly the perfect colorist for him. I'm showing you the last page because it doesn't give anything away. I had, especially the second half of this comic, I had no idea what was going on. Okay, and then Mosley, I can sort of put together the pieces of what's going on with Mosley, but the ordering of events and the attempts at a sort of emotional connection really fell flat for me. And just a lot of it just seems to not really make sense anyway. For some reason, our hero is sent to spend a whole year alone with this robot telling him everything he knows about life. And then the next we know, he's much older, and he's working as a janitor at a school where everyone's just kind of plugged into machines. And eventually we find out that his daughter is plugged into machines and is very, very involved with the utopia the machines are making. And I'll do a little bit of a spoiler here for this first issue. I'm a little curious where this is going, but it's hard to imagine personally getting through it all. The art's pretty nice. So the writer here is best known as an artist, but he is not doing the art. But anyway, and the coloring's really nice. But basically, he's upset about this machine world that has come to be. And I don't understand why he was the one who had to be alone with the machine for a year, or what that had to do with anything. But anyway, then he's being mugged by a baby or toddler and his robots. And he starts to have a heart attack, and some miraculous thing happens. And boom, he's given a giant hammer. I've heard it said that this is going to be like a Moses allegory. That's why it's called Mosley. But I also get kind of a John Henry vibe, the human with using the hammer versus the machines in the famous story about John Henry. So I don't know. I'm a little curious about it. There's some fun science fiction possibilities here. He looks a bit like a superhero all of a sudden. But maybe the writing, it's not so much bad writing, like bad sentences or anything. It's bad story structuring. And that's, I guess, that's a hard to define skill that the best writers have in spades. They really know how to structure and pace stories in a way that the rest of us don't. So in at number, Mosley was in at number 8, and in at number 7, I put Wonder Woman Historia, the Amazons. I have never really gotten into Kelly Sue DeConnick's writing, and it always felt like something was missing, and it felt that way very strongly here for me. Like that, it's like a breeze blowing over the story she actually intended me to get from this book. I did get the male gods are horrible, and it's the Amazons who have to suffer for it rather than the goddesses. And yeah, male gods are horrible. Men are horrible, I guess. Art is incredible. It's Nicola Scott, but a special shout out should go to the colorist Annette Kwok. I feel like she is as responsible for the beauty of this comic as Nicole Scott is. And I've always liked Nicole Scott. I would like to see her do more of this kind of premium kind of book. And maybe teamed up with another writer. But anyway, it's really cool to look at. if this came out in a hardback, the 3 different volumes with incredible artists, if it were in a hardback without gutter loss and everything, it would be a marvel to look at and maybe worth just being like a coffee table book of fantastic art. But it's kind of and you know, I think there are people who really get Kelly Sue DeConnick. It's just there's something like in my brain that doesn't work right for her stories. It's interesting at the back, there's a bit of process, and I did find that very interesting how, and I really like that Nicole Scott said that she does not like to work digitally. She needs that feel of the paper. And so she shows us how she lays it out. She thinks about where all the dialogue is, which is very interesting and informative. Younger artists should definitely pay attention to that. And apparently she draws something like this on one side of the paper, and then she flips it over and inks it. So I thought that was very interesting. And I'm presuming that means she puts it on a light box, one of those bright drawing boxes with a bright light under it, so that she can see her pencils through it, but she doesn't say specifically. So when she's drawing on the back, she has to think backwards. She has to draw on this side what's going to end up on that side. And then she paints it black and white, or with gray wash, to help the colorist interpret everything. So there's not that much there in just the inked part. So I guess Zeus's face is painted in. Anyway, I thought that was pretty fascinating. Her artwork reminds me a bit of George Perez in a very good way. But when you add in this kind of stunning coloring, and obviously with her painting with gray tones and stuff, she knew that it was going to be a colorist she could work with and do fantastic things with. Okay, flipping through it, I now want to rank it higher just because it looks so beautiful. But at the time the time I originally read it, I was focusing on trying to get more story out of it than I was getting. And again, Ram V is one of my favorite writers often, but just has not been working for me in detective. And I think he should have started with some shorter stories and focused on, not necessarily one and dones, but maybe 1 or 2 or 3 issue stories, and built up his the world that he wants to create within Batman's world. And it feels very familiar somehow to lots of other Batman epics, but less coherent, or less I don't know. I lost interest. But as you can see, the art by Ivan Reis is fantastic. I think he stepped it up a notch from my memories of him from a number of years ago. Even though I liked him then, he felt more like a Neil Adams clone, I think. And the coloring is really beautiful too. I'd love to know what the original piece looked like before the colors got a hold of it. Does Ivan Reis also do like gray wash and such? And I haven't read the backup story yet. I need to dig up all my old issues of this detective run and read the backup stories. And this one, at least, it's a good one for me to end on, because I get the end of this backup story about Two-Face, and I don't feel bad at all that I don't know what's going to happen, that I'm stopping with this issue. So there you go. Okay, Sergeant Rock is weird because, they've got a great cover artist in Gary Frank, although I don't know, it's weird how he's drawn this, but I think it's because this Nazi is trying to figure out, are there Americans wearing Nazi outfits, I think. Or maybe that's supposed to be Sergeant Rock himself switching helmets to a Nazi helmet and not being very happy about it. But anyway, the style is radically different on the inside, but it's incredibly nice looking art by Edward Riso and the colorist Kristan Rossi. And I think I've said this before, how much I love this art. But I couldn't tell you what... all I know is that they're behind enemy lines, and they want to get the doctor who's bringing the zombies back to life. But I don't know why they didn't do that last issue or even in issue number 2. So it just seems to be like a series of events as they sneak deeper and deeper behind Nazi lines. And maybe there's a bit of a disconnect between the writer and the artist at this point, and maybe the writer should have come back and written some extra bits of dialogue and captions or something to let us know what's what as this moves along. It's very minimal in verbiage, and maybe the writer was thinking, the writer being Bruce Campbell, the movie star, was thinking that it would be more clear in the art, the progression of the story, than maybe it really was. And here we've got Milligan's Sacrament. If anything, the art seemed to be a little less full-bodied, less detailed in this final issue, which is too bad, but I can imagine the artist may have been hitting up against a deadline. It's not bad or anything. But like I said, the story just didn't have as much final impact on me as the earlier issues did. It's not like I have a suggestion of what the writer should have done. It just, I don't know, just didn't hit me big time. Of course, priests are always handsome, aren't they? But the nun is kind of sexy too. And there is sort of a happy ending, I suppose. So the story of all of this is almost all of these books have incredibly good art, and I just was not as wowed by writing this time around. Pink Lemonade is more true to what I've been expecting, and while still having some twists and turns and everything. But so it is more itself, successful as itself. And I really enjoy, what's the writer-artist's name? It's not, is it on the cover? Cagnetti. What's his first name? So it's Nick Cagnetti and a letterer. So he's done the colors too, writing, coloring, art. I really enjoy his style. I enjoy his visual storytelling. I think it just is what it is in terms of kind of a faux childlike approach to the story, which has its charms, but also maybe, depending on my mood, I don't connect very much with the character Pink Lemonade or her friends, at least this week. I was a big fan of this in the first few issues, which I read a number of years ago when it came out as a completely self-published comic, and now it's coming out from Oni. Anyway, good stuff. I'll definitely, I think there's either 1 or 2 issues left. These will definitely be ones I seek out when I do wander into the comic book store. So it lives on beyond my pull. Neat packaging on the Spy Suburb, and it says Trader, and it's like, wait, was the name of this comic Trader Joe's? And in fact, eventually you see the Trader Joe's bag that this must have been made out of. But it gives you that sense of something hidden. So this was drawn by Matt Kindt himself, who uses this very scratchy, non-traditional, at least in terms of commercial comics, non-traditional art style, and it's painted colors by his wife. And I really liked it. It's on this nice paper. I really like that. And the story was really fun to read, and just got really slapstick by the end. And this character, who is the current person they're using as their fake spy, so he has no idea that they're using him as a spy. He is very entertaining, but becomes extremely over the top in both his narcissism and his cluelessness and his clumsiness. So, yeah, this is going to be a fun, breezy read when it's all put together. And yeah, so yeah, he ends up defeating 3 assassins in his kitchen by accident. I don't think he even realizes they're trying to assassinate him. I think he thinks he's just killed 3 plumbers or something. So, cool book. interesting concept. Obviously, Matt Kindt loves spies. And then Tom Taylor and Yasmin Putri and the colorist is also important. It's hard to read these kind of credits with this bad font. The colorist is Arif Prianto, and Yasmin Putri again. The art, love her art. When they've had fill-in issues with other artists, it's also been good art, but her art is just really hits the spot for this comic and is really wonderful. So this issue, big battles. I think we had the surprise betrayal in the last issue, and we've got Batman-ish guy who's also got some Kryptonian blood. We've got some interesting stuff with Green Arrow and Black Canary in the dungeon. And so it's a pretty satisfying read. I mean, you can't dive in at this point. It would make no sense. It would be very frustrating. If you dived in at this point, it would read like one of these comics by a writer who doesn't know what they're doing. But it all makes sense if you've been reading it all along. And Tom Taylor has that quality, whatever it is that makes writing work. I'm not sure where the big revelation happens, but I don't want to go too far. So, yeah, I guess, I don't know if it's a sign of old age or what, that I'm less excited by the big battle. But a story like this needs the big battle, and they do it well. Okay, well, let's take a look at my haul. Okay, I've got this insanely huge pile here. Last week I went on a big comic book hunt at I Like Comics with Tom, Primetime Tom, friend of Sam's Tangled Web, and now a good buddy of mine. And I ended up getting a lot of comics there, but then I also got a big box of comics that I had been ordering from, what's it called? mycomicshop.com, Lone Star Comics. So together, this is a huge amount of stuff. It's ridiculous, but I'm going to try and show it to you all anyway. First off, from mycomicshop.com, I finished up my Inhumans run. There are 12 issues in this 1970s Inhuman run. And at the beginning, this is issue number 2. So now I have all 12. Has really nice early George Perez art. And let's see. And it's scripted by Doug Moench, one of my favorite Bronze Age comic scribes. Famous for things such as Master of Kung Fu. So I think this continued on from a series started by Jack Kirby in one of those, I don't think it was Tales to Astonish, but one of those, or Astonishing Tales or something, one of those things that had 2 stories, like they would have an Inhuman story and a Black Widow story, and then they quickly spun into their own comic book. This is number 2, also a George Perez issue. I think the cover is by Rich Buckler, yes. And yeah, and then issue number 3, I'm not sure who did the cover. It might be Keith Pollard. Keith Pollard does the interior art, which I like Keith Pollard, but maybe because it's early in his career, it's not quite as sharp as the George Perez art. And then I don't know who mentioned this or how I stumbled across this Dark Horse series about Herbie. Now, I know that he's a Golden Age character. This one contains, the cover's by John Byrne, and it contains a story drawn by John Byrne, and then some other artwork that to me looks kind of Golden Age. I'm not sure. The copyright is just like 1989 for the whole thing. There's no explanation of where these other non-John Byrne stories come from. They are by story by Shane O'Shea and art by Ogden Whitney, which I think is the name of an artist from back in the good old days of of the Golden Age, but I'm not sure. So I'm looking forward to reading these. I got 2 issues of Herbie. What happens is someone online mentions something, and then I'll look on mycomicshop.com, and if it's inexpensive, I'll grab it. I think a lot of what I got from mycomicshop.com was in the $2 range. This second Herbie looks like it's all reprints or all by Ogden Whitney. And then I think someone mentioned this to me, maybe when I was talking about Cobalt Blue. I just recently picked up a 2-issue miniseries of him from 1989, but this is 1977. He first appeared in Power Comics. I think there was only 1 issue, but then it just continued. This is from, did I say 1977? Then it just continued in his own Cobalt Blue series. I don't know if there was more than 1 issue of this, but looking on the inside of these, they definitely remind me of stuff I was seeing in fanzines, but maybe a little more sophisticated, especially Mike Gustovich's, if that's how you pronounce his name. Mike Gustovich, his art. The art on the backup story is even more sort of fan-looking production. Anyway, it's an interesting thing that things started to show up in comic book shops, even in 1977. I don't know where they could have sold these things. I guess there were a few comic book shops. I know there was one that I would go to in New York City. But interesting how things would move from kind of a fanzine kind of thing into a self-published indie comic. DC presents Superman and Hawkgirl. This issue is drawn by Jim Starlin, and then I guess I can't even remember why I ordered these or grabbed these. I guess I grabbed these at the store at I Like Comics. They have all these bins where whatever the sticker price is, the comic is actually half that price, and that's kind of like a permanent sale. So I couldn't resist seeing Clark Kent and Superman team up together. And I love the Phantom Zone and that concept. So Superman teams up with the Phantom Zone criminals in the last issue of DC Comics Presents, the final chapter of the Phantom Zone criminals, an untold tale of the pre-crisis universe. I wonder if it was originally drawn beforehand. And then I was thrilled to find 2 issues of I think this is volume 1 of the Spectre. It was a short-lived volume. I think it only went 10 or 12 issues, and I may have them all now. This is issue number 8. I have to double check. And this is issue number 10. And the interesting thing is, if you hold them together, they almost look like they want to be connected covers. There's something about the design, or maybe it would go better the other way around. I'm not sure. But anyway, I greatly look forward to digging into these. And then I used to tell myself I only wanted Savage Sword of Conan 1 through 100, but now I've kind of given in. Apparently I thought I had all 100, but my CLZ told me I didn't have the issue number 77, so I grabbed that. And now I'm looking for all issues that were written by Roy Thomas. So I think that's why I might have just grabbed this anyway because I like the look of the art. I'm not sure. He was probably back by 209, so that's 209. Interesting art. I like that. I like that art. It's signed by John Watkiss. And here we have 216 and 217. I'm finding the prices of these later Savage Sword of Conan are going up. I used to be able to get them all for like $3 or sometimes even $1. Here's 219 and 230. And the very last few issues, maybe there was a very small print run or something. The very last issues are very expensive, like when I look on eBay and elsewhere. Okay, and here's some really random stuff that came from the 50-cent bins at I Like Comics. They're the place that you sometimes see these pictures of the endless row of 50-cent bins. However, there isn't as much good stuff in those 50-cent bins as there was 5 years ago, or even more recently than that. But I found some stuff that looked fun. So Major Damage, I thought that looked really cool. Superhero Spoof. I particularly enjoy superhero spoofs, read out loud with my daughter. And I didn't even realize when I picked it up that it was a flip issue with Savage Dragon number 107. So I'll read both of these. Oh, and it looks like we've got some guest stars in this Savage Dragon. And then did I know that this is really... did I know that there was a short-lived Challengers of the Unknowns in the Bronze Age? I think these are written by Jerry Conway and art by Keith Giffen. The cover's by Rich Buckler. And I think there were some other issues by Mike Nasser, who's kind of a disciple of Neil Adams. But this is also, I believe, a Geffen issue. Yep. So they look fun. And then they had a couple of issues of this DC Challenge, but I decided to only grab the one, since they didn't have them all. I just grabbed the one that's drawn by Dave Gibbons, because I enjoy seeing him draw the rest of the DC universe. So I think this would be shortly before Watchmen came out, 1985. So yeah, he might have gone from drawing this to drawing Watchmen. And then I found a Vertigo book I'd never heard of, Peter Milligan and Ted McKeever. Looks like it's worth a try. It's one of 4, so I've got the first issue. If I like it, I can hunt down the rest. Looks cool. I think there's some other... Is there some other Vertigo? Yeah. I didn't know... I guess I just wasn't paying attention to Vertigo in the aughts, from 2008, a series called Young Liars by David Lapham of... I suddenly forgot the name of David Lapham's famous series, Stray Bullets. So I got 2 issues of Young Liars. I'll give that a chance. I don't know if you have to read the issues from beginning to end, because I've got issue 4 and issue 2. And then I couldn't resist for 50 cents another copy of Captain Victory. I think this is issue 13. This might be the final issue in the series. I can't remember for sure. That's a fantastic cover. For those who don't know, Jack Kirby briefly came back to comics in the 80s through these brand new comic book companies, the indie companies. This was Pacific Comics. I think he was their first... Captain Victory was their first comic, or one of their first, and it was a huge seller at first. And then nasty stuff was done in the distribution level by the Big Two, I believe, to try to push down Pacific Comics and some of the others. Speaking of which, Eclipse Comics was one of the others. Random issue from an Eclipse comic I never heard of. Has kind of a Vertigo look on the cover. A miniseries called Enchanter. I don't think this was ever completed. If I remember looking on my CLZ, I don't think it was completed. It has some very nice black and white art. They don't list the creator on the cover. Don Chin and Mike Dringberg. Mike Dringberg is best known for a lot of his work on Sandman, so maybe this work led him into Sandman. Another Eclipse comic from Timothy Truman, this time Prowler. And so I thought I'd check that out. The art is by John K. Snyder, but the art looks really cool in here too. First issue of that. And then a random issue from the old Ultraverse. And I bought it just because it contains a little piece of a Barry Smith Rune story. Again, for 50 cents, why not? Okay, now I was been buying some Cheval Noir, but it's hard to find all of it, so I grabbed a bunch of cheap ones off of mycomicshop.com. These probably are not in any specific order. Cheval Noir was... it's French for Dark Horse, and it was Dark Horse's comic anthology of European comics. Often you get some Mobius in some of these. This is number 6. Let's open it up. Get rid of the tape. Tape is bad, people. And for most of the run, it was a thicker side with these kind of bindings that aren't always the greatest thing. I'm not sure immediately what artist that is, but it looks familiar. So most of these would have been in translation, I believe. That looks like... Is that a Jeff Darrow drawing? Often they had Jeff Darrow doing the... I can't find... They list 3 translators, Randy Lossifer, Jean-Marc Lossifer, and Elizabeth Bell. Oh, here's some. So we've got Brian Boland, Mike Kaluta, Chanteau and Vatine, Stoyton and Peters, Juliet, Rick Geary, and Andreas. In a way, it's kind of like maybe a less in-your-face version of reading heavy metal. Here is Cheval Noir number 27, advertising a Mobius on the cover, and a David Lynch comic. I think David Lynch did these one-pagers in here. Issue number 16, The Forever War from Joe Haldeman, Jacques Tardy, and Brian Boland, Jeff Darrow. Number 23. Here's an interesting cover from number 28, which advertises more Mobius inside. I think you'd get like a few pages of Mobius per issue to keep you coming back. This looks like a Mobius cover to me. I'm not sure. This is number 19. I'll be curious to see how they adopted the Forever War. I didn't realize that was going to be in here. Yeah, this looks like a scene from the Forever War, which is Joe Haldeman, the science fiction writer's big book that won him the Nebula and the Hugo, I believe. And it was kind of his answer to Robert Heinlein's Starship Troopers. And number 29. And number 21. Yeah, so very random in order here. I apologize for that. Let's see what it looked like. Let's see what it looked like in this one, number 22. It looked like Elric or something, but it's probably not. Yeah, let's just look inside. I don't actually recognize the names on the cover. You can see by the borders that a lot of these were shrunk down from the albums. And I wonder if they were in color when they appeared in Europe. I suppose it went along with the name Cheval Noir to have it be a black and white comic. A lot of this art looks very good in black and white, but it's kind of sad that it shrunk down. And finally, Cheval Noir number 8. So I don't know how long I'll wait to get all the Cheval Noirs. I've got to look now and see exactly how much of the Cheval Noir run I have. I know I have, I already have at least the first 4 issues and then scattered issues from throughout. This week in the mail, also, I got the latest issue of the Jack Kirby Collector, number 85, devoted to Kirby on film. So they actually have this... For you collectors out there, they have this acetate cover. Kind of a nice look. So the Kirby Collector is a very professionally produced fanzine that comes out, in theory, 4 times a year and just has been going forever, it seems like, because this is number 85, with endless obsessing over Jack Kirby. Is there any other artist in the world that has such a long-running magazine devoted to just them? I don't know. Is there a Picasso magazine? Is there an Andy Warhol magazine? Well, Andy Warhol had his own magazine, Interview, but it wasn't devoted to Andy Warhol specifically. But I look forward to digging into that. And then this is kind of an odd thing. because I buy occasional original art, Heritage sends me their catalogs. So they have their catalog for the Platinum Session, which includes things like this Superman. Is that number one? Yeah, Superman number one from 1939. So they have the really expensive issues, but they also have some really expensive original art in their Platinum Session. Maybe I'll do a flip through of this for the outro. Oh, look, there's even a New Yorker cover by Chris Ware. Interesting. And then I think this is more the regular original art session. There's a ton of stuff to be seen here. So I never know, like so far I've saved most of the catalogs they send me, but I don't know whether they're really piling up now. I don't know whether they're I can't decide whether they're really worth saving. When you get the big reproductions on full page ones for some of the art, then it seems more worthwhile, I suppose. It's kind of there's no prices in here or anything, but it's kind of an interesting record of what art perhaps was getting attention. Anyway, and then finally, I don't know why, but whenever I see a 3D comic for a reasonable price, although maybe I would have paid quite a lot for this one on the top if I had to, but I don't think I had to. I just can't resist the 3D comics. So I've got the Weird Tales of Basil Wolverton in 3D. Generally, the 3D doesn't work that well, but I still somehow am charmed by it. Oh, and more Basil Wolverton, Space Hawk in 3D. Yeah, so I would have considered these treasures, but I think I got them just for a few dollars anyway. And I have no idea how this is going to work. Crazy Cat in 3D? That's nutso. And then more kind of an obvious thing to do in 3D, but I look forward to it. I wonder if it's art from the original Sunday strips, Flash Gordon in 3D. And then, much to my surprise, Cracked Classics in 3D. So maybe it's too bad you can't do a video in 3D, but maybe I'll do a video reporting back to you my adventures reading 3D material. So that was the big haul of the last few weeks, and I'll be back talking old comics, new comics, collections, all of that with you guys soon enough. Chat with you later. Bye bye, everyone.